Hey y'all, I hope you're keeping busy and not letting quarantine life get you down, because it's time for another Mr. Murray Fact of the Day. You know what today is. It's April Fool's Day. Did you know that in France, instead of April Fools, they call today April Fish? Anyway, my fact for today is going to be about one of the most famous April Fool's jokes of all time. But first up, thanks to everyone who sent in good things to share this week. Here they are, coming at you. CW. His family is going on daily walks, plus having the chance to bike. BV. Hopefully going on a mission trip to Vermont at the end of July. I hope so too. LC. Family planted their very first garden. JH. Playing basketball on the balcony with siblings and playing Animal Crossing. AT. Sister found a baby possum in their yard, and Dad got pies. AS. Uprooted trees with a new tractor's backhoe and saw 3 field mice. JR. Working on learning to play a new musical instrument. TB. Got 2 facts of the day last week. Awesome, I love that one. LS. Got to play outside in the rain. DF. Had a contest with siblings to see who could make the best memes. Hey, that's me. My kids got to read books to their cousins over the internet. And now, back to our April Fool's fact. Our hero of the day is named Charles Jager, and he was a cameraman for the BBC. In case you don't know, the BBC is the British Broadcasting Corporation, and they are one of the biggest, oldest, and most trusted sources of news in the entire world. They broadcast on the radio, have multiple TV channels, websites, and millions of subscribers on YouTube. I've actually been tuning in a good bit to the BBC for coronavirus news coverage, and even 75 years ago, when my grandfather was in Europe recovering from World War II wounds, he listened to them to find out how the war was going. Charles Jager was one of their most famous cameramen, but he wasn't British himself. He was born in the country of Austria, and while he was going to school as a boy, he had one very memorable experience. He had a teacher who wasn't quite as patient as Mr. Murray is, and in a fit of anger at his students, that teacher shouted at the class, "Boys, you are so stupid, you'd believe me if I told you that spaghetti grows on trees." Now, just so we're clear, guys, spaghetti doesn't grow on trees. Spaghetti is made from flour and water, just like bread, and all the boys in the class knew that. You see, Austria is right by Italy, so nobody in Austria would be at all confused about how you make spaghetti. The teacher was basically just calling all the kids stupid. Man, I'd be so fired if I ever did anything like that. Anyway, on to an even more depressing part of Charles de Jager's life. So, in 1938, this evil guy with a dumb mustache decided that Austria should be a part of Germany. It was decided that Austria would vote on whether or not to join Nazi Germany, but Hitler wanted to make sure that the vote was fair. To make sure that it was fair, the only fair thing to do was to march a bunch of Nazi soldiers into Austria to watch the vote, to make sure that it was fair. The Nazi soldiers very fairly arrested 70,000 people who said that joining Germany was a bad idea, and they created this ballot with this incredibly balanced and fair yes circles and no circles. In a stunning show of fair vote counting, the results came in with 99.7561% of people in Austria deciding to join Germany. Despite all this fairness, Charles de Jager chose to run away and made his way to France rather than live under Nazi rule. That would have been a great plan, except the Nazis invaded France just a couple of years later. Now, as World War II raged around Europe, Charles de Jager became one of the official cameramen for Free France, a group of French people who continued to fight against Germany after much of the rest of France had been conquered. He was eventually recruited by the BBC to help record the war with his sweet cameraman skills, and he kept working for them even after the war was won. In the back of his mind, though, there was always the memory of his old teacher and the spaghetti trees. You see, in England at the time, spaghetti was a pretty uncommon food that you pretty much only saw prepackaged in a can. And Charles wondered if here in England people could actually be convinced that spaghetti grew on trees. As April Fool's Day approached in the year 1957, Charles begged his boss to let him create what would become one of the most famous April Fool's Day jokes of all time. His boss told him, "Sure, you can try your idea, but our joke budget is £100. With very little money to spend, he had to rely on volunteers to help him set it up. Most important was Richard Dimbleby, a broadcaster famous around the world for bringing some of the world's most important news stories to the public. Dimbleby would narrate, and Charles de Jager would film a short news segment on how the tree-growing spaghetti crop was doing that year. They hung strands of spaghetti on trees and filmed the news story, which was broadcast out to the television viewing world on April 1st, 1957. More than 8 million people watched. Here are some of their real reactions. "That was clearly fake. Everyone knows that spaghetti grows out of the trees sideways, not up and down." "My wife says spaghetti is made out of flour and water, but I know Richard Dimbleby wouldn't lie to us. Tell my wife she's wrong." "Do you have any information on how our family could grow a spaghetti tree of our own?" This one the BBC had an answer to. "Plant a stick of spaghetti in a jar of tomato sauce and hope for the best." Finally, a reaction from this man. His name is Sir Ian Jacob, GBE, CB. All those letters after his name mean he is a Knight Grand Cross of the Order of the British Empire and a Companion of the Order of the Bath. In other words, he is a real-life, modern-day knight. He was also the head of the BBC. Basically, this was Charles de Jager's boss's boss. They had sent him a memo telling him about the joke, but someone didn't deliver the message. "My wife and I tried looking up spaghetti in the Encyclopedia Britannica. Do you know, the Encyclopedia Britannica doesn't even mention spaghetti?" All right, y'all. If we were in the classroom, this is the point at which I'd cue up the Spaghetti Trees news report video and let you see it for yourselves. Unfortunately, when I spliced it into the video here, YouTube's algorithm incorrectly claimed it was a copyright violation. So instead, I'm going to put links to it in the video description here on YouTube and back in my Google Classroom. Please watch it. The video is only about 2.5 minutes long, and it's amazing. I still crack up watching it. Thanks for letting your teacher share some of his favorite moments from the history of our incredible world. And make sure that you stay safe and stay healthy.